All right, in this question, again, it's really important that you visualize what's happening. This one's a bit of a tricky question. So if you have your window and you have your ball, the ball actually moves up, passes the window once, is going to reach its peak, and then the ball is going to come back down again, and then actually passes the window for a second time. So because of that, the question actually has two answers, and the reason it has two answers is because the ball actually, because it's in one dimensional, it's going up and down, passing the same object twice. Because of that, you're entering into solving a question through quadratics and factoring. So this kind of goes back to grade 10 math when you went through that quadratic unit. This is another, you're going to be using quadratics also when you get into two-dimensional and in terms of projectile motion. So for this particular question, how to solve it is, there's two ways. There's actually a third way, which I'll go over in class, but the two ways that I have here are you can just factor it. So that's the first solution that I have here. So I've plugged it into my equation that eliminates final velocity, because again, when you read through the information, it gives you all the information and what you're finding or what you're trying to find, but doesn't include final velocity. So we're going to choose this equation to do our calculations. We're putting in our displacement of 40, so that's the displacement of the window above the release point. The 30 here represents our initial velocity, and then we're using -10 just as a rounded number for gravity, just for this question, because it just makes it more easily factorable. So then you go through this process, and you're going to rearrange that. You're going to rearrange that into your standard form. If you kind of think back to grade 10 math, in that standard form, then once you get to this point, you can eliminate your common factor, which is going to be 5. So that's how we've reduced it down to the 6 and the 8. And then through factoring, you're going to come up with those two numbers. And those two numbers are going to actually be 2 and 4, which means that it passes the window at 2 seconds on the way up, and then at 4 seconds it passes the window on the way down. You can also go through the whole process of using your quadratic formula, which is something that you will use in projectiles, so we might as well just reintroduce that concept. So again, this is your general quadratic formula. Again, you have to put it into that standard form, which is right here. And once you get in that standard form, then you can fill out your quadratic formula. And again, when you calculate it, you're going to end up getting two values for x. And again, these are representing the times that the ball is passing the window. Once again, 2 seconds on the way up and 4 seconds on the way down. And when you're presented with this equation and you suddenly have an initial velocity, that is your clue or your hint that you have to use a quadratic, or you're going to have to factor the equation in order to get your answers. And your answers, either in some cases you're going to get 2, which in this case makes sense. You're going to have 2 times, one on the way up, one on the way down. There's going to be other times where only one of the times makes sense. So in this particular case, things that you have to keep in mind, go through that same process, figure out what's given to you, so you can figure out what you can eliminate. So in this case, it's going to be your final velocity. When you put your information in your equation, soon as you see this, Right? As soon as you see you have an initial velocity, then that is kind of an alarm bell or a hint that yes, I'm going to have to use a quadratic, or I'm going to have to factor, and I'm going to get a possibility of two answers for this particular question.